Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of the Cultured Nerd Podcast. This week we're actually going to do two episodes for you, but this first one, episode 48, we're actually going to be talking about a possible scammer that has been kind of quietly and prolifically involved throughout the cosplay and prop community. So several people have reported that this individual has taken advantage of them, delayed deadlines, made promises that clearly didn't get delivered, and then just kept extending things again and again and again till the point where the deadline that was needed for the props was a moot point. So we want to talk about the situation, and kind of just everyone be kind of steer clear of this if this is what you're trying to do. So we're going to get into this, and with us we have a few guests, but kind of business as usual. So once we start, we'll bring everyone in piece by piece, and then we'll go from there. Hey, buddy, how you doing?
We do this show about heroes that fight for justice and things like that. And it's real sad to hear that there's an injustice that is going on and that multiple people are now being affected by it. I feel like these worlds are so small that when something like this happens, I'm sure there's even more people we haven't heard from yet.
Oh, undoubtedly. I actually, when our first guest mentioned this to me, I actually went over to this individual's page and I went through the comments, and I actually saw just a handful of these things. A lot of people saying, hey, where's my deadline? Hey, where's this? Where's that? And so I started kind of just tracking different screen names, and I saw about a couple dozen people all thing across multiple posts. So it doesn't sound like this is an isolated incident. It may just be something a lot more problematic than just a few people here and there. So as we go into it right in, normally we take this show and we have that running gag that it's this is the show where I explain things to Michael that he has no idea about, but this is actually something we both have an idea about. So instead of going into the small talk and the business as usual, we're just going to jump right into bringing our guests on. So obviously, Michael, you've been here before. We had you on a Batman Beyond fan film. Still very excited about that project. But while we were talking behind the scenes, you were telling me that one of the kinks that you had very late stage in production was all your props that you had paid for never showed up.
Yeah. Thanks for having me back. It's good to be back, although not with the best circumstances in this case, but it's still good to see you guys again. But yeah, as I kind of mentioned to you in the past, we face a lot of different challenges, but one thing that was a bit unfortunate is while we were in pre-production, we were planning to get our props made. Yes, I did commission some props from a certain vendor that I found online, and it just ended up turning into a whole ordeal that dragged on for like months longer than it should have, where the person did not end up making the props, delivering us anything, nor did he give refunds when I asked. So it kind of dragged on for a bit of a long process, as I think similar to what you did, where you kind of just started digging into it a little bit and you started seeing signs of like, wait a second, there's other people that have similar stories. And it became this whole months long kind of digging into this situation where I learned more about this person and his history. And that's also where I met many of the other, I guess you could say, victims of the scam, some of whom we have on the show today.
Yeah, so two of them that are actually backstage right now. We have another that's going to be joining us a little bit later on if they're able to make it. But we've got Joe, a.k.a. Whiskey Banger. And then we've got Mar, which is known among the community as I Like Comics Too. So I'm just going to move some people around. And I guess to start with you, Michael, since you were the one who brought this all to our attention, the first question that I had is that in any time a business transaction gets made, was there any contracts that were signed, or was it all kind of like a a message, this is what I need, and then they took money from you, and then they just kind of ghosted you or flaked on you, or how did it go down?
Yeah, so it's definitely something in retrospect that should have probably been ironed out more. But I think that's the difficulty when it comes to things like cosplay or like independent kind of films, fan films. A lot of it is, not as formal as it should be. And so when it came to talking to, this vendor, Jim Logan Props, and I think the way we kind of talked is probably similar to how many other people talked. It started first on Instagram usually. He has a page, and you would see all of his work, and you would reach out to him there and talk to him there. And eventually, we took this conversation to email to get things a little bit more formal. So we did email back and forth. I actually first started talking to him in the end of 2022, actually. And so we kind of just talked about what are the possible things that I would need. And so, I did my best to keep an organized list, and I would write down things that I would need. And probably the closest thing to having a contract is just having things written in email form, at least. So there is still that sort of like written negotiation, I guess, through email. And it wasn't like an immediate process. It took a while for us to formalize like what exactly we would need from him for the props. So over the course of several weeks going into 2023, I would kind of detail out like, here's what I need, here's how many items I would need, and I would ask for quotes. So he would give back quotes. He would have a sort of like formal quote PDF that he would give out, and he would list out like, here's all the items, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Here are the prices for each things. And we would sort of write down again in email, like what is a deadline we need. And so even if there was nothing, I guess, formally signed, I would say there's still a general agreement written through email that would detail out, again, what are the items exactly and what is the deadline that we would need the items by. So that's probably the closest thing, yes.
Did you notice any shadiness in the initial process? Like you go from Instagram, you go from email, you're communicating back and forth. Those responses are coming in a timely fashion. When was your first red flag, and how did that play out?
I would say the initial interactions were fine overall. Maybe the strangest thing is he did display a bit of an attitude even from the beginning at certain parts. Like whenever you would question him with something that was like maybe he wasn't expecting, the way the way he worded his responses would sometimes be a little bit more not not like aggressive, but it's not the way you would expect someone to treat like a would-be customer, right? Um, so there was a little bit of that in the beginning before we kind of started talking. There again, in our first Instagram messages or like initial emails, there's a little bit of that. But as soon as I kind of started, more formally asking about things that I wanted to purchase from him, then he kind of maybe turned on the more like vendor kind of mode. And so things kind of did go to a more normal state after that. So that was probably, again, the beginning was a little bit weird, but it wasn't anything that kind of fully turned me off yet to what it could be. But I would say the first red flag is probably like after we had made the official deal and payment was sent. And I talked a little bit about this in the video that I made where I kind of went over a story. Weeks like we had several weeks basically before the deadline was going to be for our film, so it was a pretty good amount of time. And I think normally when you sort of commission any sort of work from anyone, it doesn't have to be props, right? It can be anything, like whether it's a graphic design, a website, just any sort of product. You typically can expect the person to give you like status updates, right? Just occasionally they'll say like, oh, like here's where I'm at this week. Here's where I'm at this week. Maybe show you some pictures, just something, screenshots. But with Jim, I was occupied with preparing the rest of the film, so I didn't really check in too often. But every now and then, I would still email, just be like, "Hey, how's it going?" Just a friendly kind of check in. And there was never really any response. There was no progress. There were no pictures shown. So I would say that was the first red flag. Like after a few weeks and of not seeing anything, I was like starting to get a little bit worried, but I was too occupied at the time to really like kind of stand down and think about it. So.
Joe, where do you fall in this timeline? And when was the initial, what was the period of time that you needed? What was the due date of your props, Michael?
Oh, for me, like I said, we first started talking in the end of 2022, but we didn't kind of formally do our deal till I think February 2023, and we needed it. What we said was the end of March, um, and I would say actually among the guests, um, me and the other Joe that might be coming later, we're actually like the most like the latest. We're the most recent. And then Joe and Mar here have actually like they go further back than we do in terms of like knowing about Jim. So
Actually, I think I'm.
oh
I
right,
think
oh,
I'm
wait, you're
newer.
also similar to us, I think maybe.
Yeah, I was. It's been a little over a year now for me
Okay.
since I made the deal. So
I'm sure your transaction was similar to Michael's. You saw some stuff online, you inquired about something, you went to emails and stuff like that. When did your red flags pop up? When did things seem off for you during that process?
actually, when I reached out to a prop maker friend and was like, "Oh, this is cool. Like, I just got this sort of a thing. What do you think of it?" And he was like, "That armor looks kind of familiar." And I was like, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah. Let me look into something really quick." And because I was kind of inquiring, like, how do you think this was made? You know, blah blah. blah. Just kind of getting his specialty on it, his eyes. And he comes back and he's like, "Yeah, this dude is a huge scammer. And here's the RPF forms." And I was like, "Oh no," So I went through there and I was kind of I read through, what was it, 100 pages of people that have had the similar transaction history with this guy for the last like 10 years. So I was like, dang, this goes deep. And then,
Does no, I need to let you continue. At this point, though, does this person actually even make these things? Like, is there any history of that at all? Or, like, at what part is this a scam? Obviously, over promising and under delivering is true, but how deep does this go in terms of this person's expertise to do this?
I mean, I believe that he knows how to make these things. I mean, he obviously
Yeah.
he's had well, I've seen his recent releases, like the Wolverine suit that he's copying the movie coming out, the Deadpool movie. But I've seen videos through other people that have supposedly been to his, place of work or that worked with him or whatever, and he's obviously got stuff going on, stacks of
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
background like that. Um, but as far as whether he keeps using the same photos over and over again for a prop that he made 9-10 years ago, you got me on that one. So that's been hinted at. Maybe he made it one time, but he's not making it again. But he's still selling them.
Right.
So, yeah, definitely. Under delivering, delivering it all. I don't. Just taking the money and going. Obviously, some people get their stuff, so he's making some. It's just who he gives them to is the big thing.
And that's on that note. That's actually something that I noticed when I was going through. I saw that he actually had a very long-standing running history with Bat in the Sun Productions and made a lot of costumes for a lot of their superhero versus things. The one thing though was that he made this very similar armor style, and it was kind of like almost like a Saiyan Dragon Ball Z style. They had the shoulder pads and just like a very base chest where he would customize different symbols for things. And that base template is something that you could probably just make just an interchangeable mold, pour out, make the suit, and then just modify it for each project. But I just quickly Googled Bat in the Sun Jim Logan, and I saw a bunch of links coming from Facebook comments where people were complaining that every suit is exactly the same. Like, hey, you keep using this guy, and he keeps making the same suit for everything. So maybe you should get a different prop maker because every suit looks exactly the same. And that was one of the complaints that someone was putting out in like 3 different posts. He said the
Right.
Wolverine suit, Batman suit, and a few other characters all had the same chest plate. And I think even he did a project with Bat in the Sun. It was like, I think it wasn't Legend of the White Dragon. That was the other one that they. It might have been that actually, the upcoming JDF film, where all
I think
their
so, yeah.
Yeah.
all of their projects, all of their like foot soldier
Like the armor kind of
armors,
stuff. Yeah.
exactly the same, just the same armor again, just unilaterally, and a lot of people complained about it. So, from my understanding, if the client is high profile enough, you're 100% going to get your stuff.
Right.
But if you're not high profile enough, it's who knows? Because I'm seeing literally that same sentiment. Everything I Google is, I'm glad you got your stuff, but you have a lot of followers. I'm not getting my stuff. So I see a lot of stuff like that where people are criticizing the fact that essentially what these are saying is that he's scamming the little guy, but putting all of his time and effort into the big projects.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that's the like difficult part to all of this, right? Because like Joe said, he's been doing this for 10 plus years. It's like he does have things to show, and that's what makes it difficult for like new people to spot the kind of red flags, because he does have like this long history that does prove like, yes, he does make things, and it's such a large quantity of that like over all these years. But then yeah, it's like, is it right to only deliver on some of your customers and not all of them, which obviously it isn't. That's kind of, I think, the route he goes with. Yeah. So.
Right.
Well, a lot of the stuff that I'm seeing here, it seems like he's one, from what all these comments are saying, all this stuff that I'm pulling up, they're all kind of having the same sentiment as, how did you have time to take my money and do my project while you were working with these guys? So it seems like he's double dipping, where he's over promising, like taking on 10 clients and delivering half of those clients because they're the bigger clients, and then just doesn't have time for the other stuff. But like you said here, I just Googled it, and you said here's the RPF scammer recaster warning, latest alias for this individual, and then they have a list of literally different shops that have been owned by him that have been shut down for these things, and he just keeps reopening under a new name and then keeps doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Which is, as they say here, Logan Props, Jim Logan, JLFX, Snit Shop, Sknit, I don't know, the Wolverine sound does. The Snit, yeah, Snip Stop, Logan Props, recent aliases. They just go on and on of all these different things. Let's see. And then people saying here, I don't know how much Bat in the Sun actually cares about this behavior. This thread is a good read, but check the responses. Pretty sure after this, they used his props again still. Bat in the Sun clearly doesn't care. So they're pointing out that this keeps happening, but Bat in the Sun hasn't stopped, even though they've been told stop working with this guy.
If I could chime in here for a second, I actually reached out. So for context, I think I'm unfortunately the person who dealt with quote unquote Jim Logan the longest ago.
Yeah.
I reached out to him similar to everyone else over Facebook back in 2014, actually, because the Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider had just come out. I was really excited about the character. I wanted the helmet to complete my costume as a cosplayer. I reached out to him in April of that year with a deadline of October for New York Comic Con. And just like everyone else, he just sort of ghosted me. I reached out again and again over Facebook, over email, over new email addresses that he would post on his Facebook pages saying, if you're waiting for something, reach out to me here instead. I didn't hear back from him, and the deadline came and went. So I did a little bit of research just like Michael did now and found the horror stories. I had dozens, and I'm not exaggerating here, dozens of people reaching out to me on social media after I posted on my blog, and the story just kind of started spreading around at the time. I think at the time when I stopped tallying it up, it was a good 10 grand in money that had been paid out, and then the props had never been delivered from people all around the country. I remember there was this one guy who reached out who said that he had been planning to use it for charity drives, the costume. So just not a nice person by any means. And he didn't answer me until after I had posted that, and it started getting picked up by places like the Mary Sue and other sort of comic news websites. He reached out pretty upset. He demanded that I take it down. I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And if you have, any beef with that, you can talk to my lawyer. And he got pretty upset about that. He started going on really passive aggressive rants on his social media. For a time, he said he was going to stop working with cosplayers. He dropped a comment saying how if I wanted attention for my cosplayer, that I should show my boobs more instead of calling him out. So just not a great person by any means. And I reached out to Aaron from Bat and the Sun at the time to sort of just give him a heads up and see what his take was. He was pretty neutral and apologetic the first time I spoke with him, but then continued to work with Jim afterward and didn't seem to care when I reached out afterward again. And I know I have those messages saved somewhere, which I'm happy to provide if I can dig them up. But yeah, they don't care. A lot of organizations don't care as long as they get what they need from him. But he has continued the same process of screwing over cosplayers. When he gets caught, he'll move, like physically move locations and change the name of his store and start over. And he just keeps doing that over and over and over. I think he's on Etsy now under Jim's Armor. So he just slightly tweaks the name and starts again. He's been terminated from Etsy in the past because previous accounts have had such negative reviews with people not receiving their stuff. So I'm just waiting for the same thing to happen again. Yeah, really frustrating experience with this guy for sure. And I'm sad to hear that, almost a decade later, he's still doing the same thing.
On one hand, when you hear about this, when I first heard about this, it's like, well, yeah, you know what I mean? Like it's the charming thing about cosplay is that the individuals that thrive in it are almost these Renaissance people. You're not only designing and making and executing and performing these costumes. So to hear that you're getting other people involved, and then to not deliver on this stuff, doesn't the weight of all of this and the time, when does this become criminal fraud? Because I hear everything that's going on, but the changing of businesses and physical locations, that to me speaks of something much larger. I mean, all of you have been affected by it and there's more people, but at what point is there a criminal case against this person? Because there is nothing stopping this from continuing, it seems like.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think all of us have probably had the same thought about, how do we bring along to this, right? Because it does seem like, especially for something that's been going on again for over 10 years, like how can he get away with this constantly? And I think a few of us have tried going, the legal route with kind of bringing in the court system, but it has been, at least for myself, and I know the other guest who hasn't joined yet, Joe, we both did try, going the small claims route, and it's just a really frustrating process. I think Jim's been doing this for so long that he knows how to circumnavigate the system. It's shady, and I think the way he operates his services as a vendor, it's just on the line of not being an official corporation, right? Like nothing's registered. So he has this sense of being able to get away from all of this without it being a real criminal charge, I guess. So yeah, it's a very difficult and frustrating situation to try to figure out how, like you said, how can we tie this into something more legal? I don't have the answer. I don't know if any of us do, but I think it would be nice if someone did have an answer, an answer to that.
So while this all started, Michael, when you first posted your stories about the videos and I shared everything, I actually had a longtime follower of TCN. I'm just pulling up their messages right now. I'm going to leave his name out of it just because I don't want to make it too obvious.
Sure.
But the individual said that he actually knew Jim from when they were both wrestlers. And he said that even back when he was a wrestler with Jim, he was very much the same individual. He said, I can corroborate every bit of it because this is how he operated even back during the wrestling days. So it seems like however long ago that was, from my understanding, it was like 15, almost 20 years ago, maybe, that he was doing the wrestling side of things, that he was very much this scummy kind of individual, according to this individual who DM'd me, that this was how he's always been. He said, unfortunately, the last bit is, unfortunately, I forgot his actual name. Otherwise, I could probably help you a lot more if I had his full name. And I think that's how he's been getting away with this, by using like a pseudo, like a fake name, and not ever actually posting anywhere on social media or anything his actual name. Because if you have his actual name and his location, you can actually file claims against him. But if you use a kind of a stage name, good luck, because that's what
Not
makes it
just
harder.
that, actually. It's not just the stage name. He also uses other people's PayPal accounts, probably because his own PayPal account was terminated at some point for fraud. So he has this pretty elaborate system of keeping himself as distant from the process as possible. He also has a habit of accepting payment, which happened to me on PayPal as friends and family, which means you lose protections as a
Right.
buyer, which I take full responsibility for falling into that trap. That was my mistake, but it seems like a common tactic as well.
Yeah, so that's one thing for all the listeners. If you do any sort of business transaction with anybody who's not your friends and family, and whether that be on PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, they all have a setting that you can switch it to a purchase, and it makes a paper trail and puts things up to taxes. It puts things up to legal tender. Like they will protect you if this kind of stuff happens. So people like this know those loopholes, and then they insist, oh, it's easier if you do it this way, or it's easier if you do this or that, or it's less taxes. I get more money if this way, and then they try to like finagle every penny out of it. But really, they're preventing the protection of the entity that's handling the charges.
Right.
Yeah.
Is this the largest of this type of scam? Or maybe, Mar, what is the history of, have there been other cosplay scammers in the past? Have other people, I mean, obviously there probably has, and they've been snuffed out. Why were those people snuffed out and he has been able, I mean, obviously his shadiness and changing all of this, but I feel like, does the community need to start pointing out these things more often and saying like, this is this individual?
There absolutely are other scammers, and unfortunately, some of them are still prevalent. If you go to the forum that I think Michael might have mentioned it, called the RPF, it's sort of the cosplay props central where everyone kind of communicates and shares stories. There are, and I'm not exaggerating here, 100 pages on Jim Logan back from 2013. People sharing their experiences, keeping track of his new social media. And there are threads for other people who do similar things, but like Jim, they're very good at hiding their tracks or changing their name or locations when the heat starts to fall on them. And Jim, in particular, like Michael was saying, is really good at evading legal repercussions. It's something that I also looked into back in 2014 when my experience happened. But because all of us are spread around the country, it's really difficult to enforce a class action lawsuit. And even when I'm in New York, I contacted the local news, the Better Business Bureau, the state attorney, and I tried to escalate it as far as I could. But because he's not in my state, there's very little that they can do. And I'm not going to go, he was in Florida at the time. I'm not going to waste more money to go down to Florida and prosecute him, right? So these people just keep getting away with it because there's not much people can do without, investing way more of their own money than they should to hire a lawyer in that local region.
I have gone to small claims court as well. The other individual didn't show. I said, what happens now? They say, oh, they have a claim against them. That was a long, long time ago. Nothing ever came of that. So I know that feeling of not feeling like you're being heard at all.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
did find what you were talking about, Mar, about the RPF. There is 98 pages. The posting starting on May 8th, 2013. The most recent looks like just a few weeks ago. I think I even see you on here too. from August. You
Yeah,
posted on
that's
this.
me.
I see you as Michael
video.
as well. Like, so this is a pretty gnarly thread that this is has been posted. The most recent post was September 26th of this year, but it has gone on. Page 1 started May 8th, 2013,
Yeah.
which is 10 and a half years. Yep. So old Instagram, new Instagram, Etsy store, old Etsy store, Flickr, other aliases, more aliases, previous aliases, Facebook, etc. Previous alias, Dave Pordue, Outlaw Products, now offline. There's a lot of stuff on here. Pictures of stuff that may or may not have been ever done. So, but it's kind of insane to see that there is literally a online paper trail for 10 years. Which,
yeah, and I think that's a crazy thing because I feel like there are probably a lot of other scammers that do things like this, but you would think after a while, like the scamming itself can get tiring, especially when you get so much kind of people calling you out. And so the fact that he's been doing this for over 10 years and doesn't seem to like get tired of people calling him out and needing to move and change the store name, like that's just crazy, right? Because I feel like there's a world where he could just operate his business completely like honestly and legit, and he'd be fine doing that, but he chooses not to do that. And so it does blow my mind that he just continues this for so long. It's like, I don't know, like who's the winner here in that sense.
I think that's just the craziest thing to me, is that there's so much of a paper trail here. And I don't know, in my own personal experience, whenever I've ran a story or ran a post or anything that was immediately like, hey, this is wrong, or I get called out for it, I feel like shit. Like, I just like, oh, that sucks. Like, my name is now tarnished. What is happening? Like, I legitimately like have to go on and be like, hey, I fucked up, and I like issue apologies and stuff. And I don't know, maybe it's just I can't personally see how I could operate that way. It seems very almost sociopathic to keep this going for 10 years and be scamming people for upwards of 10 grand for like a single individual. With that, I mean, you can, if there's 98 pages of this, I'm sure there's probably like 100+ grand worth of scams that have been done. There's
right,
no
especially
way.
over all that time.
Yeah, like that's insane. And I see people in here, I paid hundreds for this. 1 year ago, he took 150 from me, never got anything. So yeah, it seems a lot of like lots of small amounts, which is
and I think it all adds up for sure. I mean, for me it was like $13.50 for me. I was talking to someone who just recently, I think like just 2 months ago, unfortunately got scammed by him, and he had paid $1,800, I think. So the amounts definitely do go up.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think the sad reality, I think, is that it's like for everyone who does this stuff. So like, oh, I want a prop made, and I don't have the facilities to do this or whatnot. For the amount of money he scams out of these people, they literally could have bought a 3D printer themselves, learned how to do the work, and then finished it in the amount of time he strung them along, which is absolutely insane. That this keeps happening.
I also want to note that I know a few minutes ago we were talking about how he does produce props if you have enough of a following, but he's messed up there too. When I posted on the blog all those years ago, I remember Meg Turney, who at the time was a host for Rooster Teeth and had a huge following.
Oh yeah,
said that she had worked with him once and was successful, and then got scammed out of over $100 a second time because of this dude. So if you scam over someone like Meg Turney, I don't know if following even matters at that point.
Right.
And I've also seen him actually deliver a vest to someone who has a couple hundred followers. So it doesn't really. There's no real rhyme or reason. I think the man is just
Random.
egocentric in all of this.
What?
He does actually go on the RPF and check comments. So if anyone buys anything and thinks they got scammed and writes in, he checks that. He likes to go on there and it feeds.
What
Fun.
pieces does he finish? So we've mentioned the art, the same chess piece he's been making over and over again. Is it like, what are the pieces people do seem to get, or is there any consistency in those things? Like, oh, he makes this one thing really great, but anything else, who knows?
Doesn't seem to be.
Yeah, as Joe said, I think it's random because you'll get 5 people who did get something, like their orders fully completed, and you get 5 people who didn't. So it doesn't. I think what you said actually was very spot on, Joe, about him being like very egocentric. It's almost like if you like do anything to question him at all, he'll immediately like put you on his like no-go list, and he'll like single and target. He'll single you out. But I think there probably are some people who he just decides like, yeah, I'll do this order, and they don't say anything, and they never question him, and they just wait, and then they get their thing. So it seems,
And I don't want
pretty
I don't
random.
want people to get the impression that because he has good reviews on Etsy that he has changed his ways at all, because Michael's experience was obviously very recent, and
Yeah.
that is indicative of a pattern of behavior for him.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, another kind of victim that I talked to recently, I think was even more recent than me. There were actually several people after I posted the video. They had messaged me like, oh, I wish I saw this earlier. I'm in a similar situation, like just last week or last month I commissioned something, and it's been weeks since the deadline, and I haven't heard back. So it's definitely still going on. Like there are people who are currently probably still expecting things from him and not getting them. So there's no slowing down.
So I'm looking through this forum, and I've entered this rabbit hole, and this is a part of my life now. And I'm looking through here, and there people are saying that, oh, he was arrested once. Here's a picture of his mugshot from when he was arrested for theft. Here's a paper trail of him saying, I'm moving from Florida to California, and sold a bunch of stuff so he could pay for his move. There's a lot of stuff in here. And a lot of people saying that he gets invited to cons to do guest judging for cosplay events, and that's a big thing. A lot of people saying that he gets a lot of attention from camera work, loves his name on things, even if it's a new name. This is actually kind of insane.
Well, and that's kind of the thing. Like I know with me, I following Jim for a couple of years before I purchased anything, and he works with Bat in the Sun and a lot of big name cosplayers, and always posting stuff about his interaction with them, and those sorts of things. So you feel like he's a legitimate businessman or someone you could trust, like Bat in the Sun, especially because all their stuff is so comic, cosplayer related. So when everyone sees that, then they kind of drop their guard a little bit, and that's where you get the, oh yeah, sure, I'll do friends and family. Like I want to hook you up because you seem like a cool dude, or whatever. I don't, the niceties, come out, and then that's where it gets you. So that's I wish a lot of these other people would at least publicly condemn him, just so they can keep other people from falling into the pit like we did. But yeah, it doesn't seem to be happening. I don't know if Bat in the Sun uses them anymore, but then again, the Legend of the White Dragon, I think, their latest project. So I mean, even that's still coming out, right? I don't think they released it yet. So that's still gonna.
No, it's supposed to be coming out this year, and it actually has a bunch of his props.
Right, so that's gonna
even in the teaser trailer.
That's gonna inevitably push him back out into the limelight again, because people are like, "Oh, that's cool," and I'm sure his name will be thrown out there, and then we get a whole nother generation of people losing $1,000+ So
yeah, it's almost like his strategy is to just surround himself with quantity of positive posts that will drown out the negative posts. It's like he just protects himself with this, like the surface level of when you kind of find out about him is like, yeah, he does stuff successfully, And so for many people like myself and others who kind of fell into the trap, it's like if you didn't go past that surface level, you wouldn't see everything that trails behind him, in his history, which is unfortunate. And I think that like the whole thing he does, like one of the worst parts I feel like is that he kind of breaks the trust in the community, right? Like Michael, you were saying earlier about the idea of being a cosplayer and building this stuff, and it's like there really is a strong sense of passion and community between everyone doing this, and you want to be able to trust everyone. You want everyone to kind of be friends in the sense of like, hey, we're all doing this artwork because it's what we're passionate about. And I think he definitely takes advantage of that trust and puts a bad name to to all of this. And I've spoken to other prop makers and other vendors who know about Jim, and it's always like like they look at this situation very sourly because it does kind of tarnish the trust that even they can get from their customers when you have someone like Jim who is ruining reputation for like, can you trust vendors or not? And obviously there are many good and honest prop makers out there, and so it's unfair to them that like the whole community is affected in a sense.
I had the privilege of working with the prop maker known as Dragon here in Los Angeles. Scanned my head with a 3D printer. His roommate made us eggs. Like all of your experience makes me feel so sad because my experience was so positive. Aside from all that stuff, in his living room, I'm playing with all these toys and things. He's like, "Oh, I just did that for a LARP," or "Here's this project that never." And I was like, "Oh, I tangibly saw these things." Now, my situation is very different. Someone was paying a lot of money for us to be there, so I got to piggyback and be a part of it. And there are good prop makers out there. Knowing what you know now, somebody sees something online, what steps would you go in to even approach that? We talked about switching over and not doing friends and family, regardless of what they say. Is there anything else that, I mean, obviously having them sign a contract, but normie people don't just have contracts. So what steps would you advise people take from your knowledge?
I mean, obviously, when it comes to that, it's going to have to be some kind of, don't do Zelle transfers, don't do Cash App, go through the channels of like PayPal that's going to back your purchase. Don't do anything, don't be nice. You're paying, make sure that you get what you're paying for by using those companies that back you and that'll go fight for you, because otherwise you got nothing. I mean, obviously we got this guy out here and he's probably scammed $100,000 out of everybody over the past 10 years. And there's probably not even a whisper of his name in the court system or the IRS or anything else. I mean, this guy's obviously, he knows the channels. So, you're not going to get from him and no one's going to help you out. So you might as well stick to those things that do help you. They're there to help you. So otherwise, I'm not really sure other than that.
Yeah, I think, one thing to try to do at least is to do a second and third check on, anyone you're considering kind of dealing business with. I think for all of us, we probably did our like preliminary checks, but again, we didn't kind of breach that surface level news to find out, what's underneath that. So I think if you're dealing with someone new, yeah, just try to dig deeper as much as you can. Maybe try to even confirm with like past customers, like how the process and interaction went. So it's basically better to be safe than sorry. Which again, it's unfortunate that you have to do this within the community, but it's just about safety in that regard. So
I have a couple other tips too that I learned the hard way through this experience. One being pay half up front and pay the other half upon completion. Pay with PayPal, and PayPal has extended their window since I messed up with this situation. So I think it's 180 days now, which is great because sometimes cosplay creators, prop makers have long queues and it can take time for your goods to get delivered. So if you don't see any work in progress photos or your item is not ready to ship within that window, do not be afraid to file a dispute with PayPal. They will take your side if there is no evidence of the item being produced. Don't be afraid to start that process. I would highly encourage anyone, if they're feeling suspicious about a situation, to go that route.
I wonder at this point, as all of this has transpired, multiple people over multiple decades, I wonder how much longer all of this goes. Or I wonder if there will be a person that will make a big enough stink. All of you have used your voices and the extent of your powers to bring light to this, yet I feel like we're only another season away of somebody else saying the same thing happened to them. Joe, you've been listening to all of this. I'm sure you have had similar experiences. Where are you at in all of this?
Well, that's if he's available. I know Joe came in. He said he was traveling home right now, and there was a lot of noise behind the scenes. So I'm not sure if he's going to be able to pop in or not. I sent him a private message asking him if he's ready to come on.
I'm not here to peer pressure anybody into doing anything they don't want to do. Joe, you can come on the show or not come on the show. That's not this type of environment. Michael, I'm sure I have an idea of what he was making for you, Batman-y things. You know what I mean? And you don't have to get into them in case they are plot points. Joe, what did you pay him to make you?
That's Whiskey Banger Joe.
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Yes.
I was watching, Bat in the Sun, and Kevin Porter's Batman, I think, is just, I love his Batman. So it was Thomas Wayne, so the Batman variant, and so I had been watching that for a few years, and I purchased that whole suit. I got to the point where I was like, this guy's making these cool things for all these people that, as part of the community, and I build a lot of stuff, but I kind of wanted something that just was built for me. I finally had the funds, I wanted to get something cool and not have to, pour all my blood and sweat into another suit. And I'm not really, well versed on, silicone mold making and things like that yet. So I was like, yeah, let's just get this done. So I ordered that from him. But in retrospect, I'm thinking about our conversation when I first did that, and he told me, because I was like, yeah, I want the Thomas Wayne suit, blah blah. He's like, oh yeah, the Japanese Batman or something like that, and I was like, yeah. And then later in the conversation, I wanted to make sure that I was ordering the right one, right? So I was like, yeah, the Thomas Wayne bat suit, and he's like, yeah, I don't know what the characters are, I just make these things. And it was kind of like, I'm thinking about that. I'm like, well, I guess if you're a prop maker, you're probably pretty close to your props and the knowledge base on those universes, that you're working in. If you take like a good prop maker like Reeve FX, he makes a lot of Batman stuff. I actually got a cowl.
I know him personally. He's a great guy.
Oh, he's awesome. I got one of his cowls. I had actually purchased the cowl to go with this suit that I was going to get from Jim Logan. But he was great. But anyway, that didn't work out. So I have a Batman cowl that's really great. But he, at least he knows all about Batman, all the different versions of Batman. He's really into all the lore of that stuff. So I guess that was kind of in retrospect, I should have probably thought about that one a little deeper too. But
yeah, I've seen that actually, because when I was doing research like on other people's stories, like exactly what you said. It's so weird with Jim, because normally, again, you expect a prop maker or cosplay maker like to know what they're making, right? Like that they're fellow fans and nerds. But I don't know if this is like a front he's putting on, like playing dumb or not, right? Like it could be fake, but it just seems like anytime he's talking about one of the armors or whatever he makes, it's like he doesn't know like what he's actually making. You know, it's like he refers like the way you said, he was like, oh yeah, like Japanese Batman. And you're like, that's not, that's not what we're talking about. But it seems like he only knows like these surface level details about all these characters that he's making. Again, I don't know if that's a front or not, but it is very strange. I think even like when you look on his Etsy store, like he doesn't use the actual character names. He just says like random descriptions of like what the character kind of looks like without actually referring to the character.
And that's actually something that is on Etsy. If you put like Batman costume on Etsy, it gets flagged, and Warner Brothers Legal actually jumps in because it's not supposed to be used. So if you use like half-assed descriptions, like bat symbol, bar, that's how you get around it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I know that there was a lot of, especially
so there's
prop makers were kind of getting shut down because of that stuff. So, but I think he was doing that before it really got heavy in this last year, where he's kind of just hinting at the name a little bit. But
yeah, and like you said, even it would be even in like private messages, he would do the same thing where it's like it's just strange, I don't know, Mar, if you've had that kind of experience too with what you were commissioning. Maybe not.
In my Etsy store, it says battle armor for orphan child to fight and put fear into people in night. We've been selling a lot of them. There you are, Mar. Tell us more.
Oh, are you waiting on me?
No, we were, but now you're back. What things did you commission originally?
Oh, I commissioned a Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider helmet.
You said that. I apologize. I remember.
Oh, no, you're good.
Okay.
Totally fine.
Did he know who Ghost Rider was?
Yeah, did he say like demon motorcycle guy?
I don't know if he knew that version of the character, because I think at the time Robbie Reyes had probably just come out in the comics, so I just sort of sent him reference pictures myself. So I don't know if he was super familiar with the character or not.
Yeah. Right.
There obviously is a high demand for specified things. And it seems like there is a battle between the studios not wanting certain things out there and their shops aren't making these things. And then you have toys, but toys aren't necessarily of the quality that you need to have something be functional all day long for an event and things like that. It's a different life cycle. Why isn't there? Why hasn't like McFarlane or one of those other on a smaller scale kind of got into this space? What is preventing that from happening?
That's a good question. I think part of it. Oh, sorry. Someone.
Oh, no. You go.
I know from my perspective, I mean, I'm by no means a professional cosplayer or anything like that, but I have a pretty high standard of what I want to wear and how I want it to look. And generally speaking, mass-produced items aren't quite of the quality that photographs super well, or like you said, will stand up to the wear and tear of attending a convention and like a helmet on your head getting sweat all over it and all that stuff. So I know a lot of cosplayers do buy mass-produced stuff and then either use it as something that they can recast and customize, or as a base that they can like paint over and detail work on to make look better.
I was muted. I said, on that note, I actually know of a lot of communities that, Hasbro Pulse has gotten really good over the last few years with their castings for like the Ghostbusters props and the Star Wars helmets and everything on that front. But there's entire communities that will buy the random Boba Fett helmets and then tear it down to nothing and then put it up. And they I think even the 501st Legion, like the actual Star Wars like community that does all that, we do charity events and all that stuff. They will buy these things in bulk and then have walk through instructions on how to take these things down or how to recast them, everything. So I think in terms of what Michael was asking, the only outlet that does make some sort of prop that people do use is Hasbro right now. Even then, it's like anywhere between $100 to $200 helmet that they're mass producing.
Right. Well, I mean, Nerf does a good job. I just got the pulse rifle and redid that. So they're kind of getting in the game, right? But that's, I mean, I don't know. It's when you get like a local guy that knows how to do it, they just come out so well. You know, when it's really just a customized, geared towards you sort of thing. So, plus you don't have to work. You don't have to put any more work into it. You know,
Okay.
the lazy.
And I mean, on that same note, you mentioned Reeve VFX. Like he's done work for like the CW. He made the Flash costume from the Crisis Infinite miniseries that they did. So he's actually got professional sector work, and he still makes props for people, and the stuff's fantastic. Yeah. But it's very much you get what you pay for with a lot of these people, exactly. If they're good enough, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, I actually want to get his reverse Flash cowl. Been looking at that.
That's very cool.
Yeah,
he and I really talk cool. Batman a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Now we've got Joe.
There's other Joe.
Hey, yeah, sorry for being late, everybody.
Quite all right.
You are muted, my friend.
Muted.
I said, well, thank you for joining us. I said, as you pop up, it makes me so sad to hear this story as I look around these 3 man caves with these wonderful displays of replicas and things like that. Yeah. And to see that, like, there is a market here. You were all good faith in wanting these things. Joe, you've heard a lot of things. What did you want to say but have not had a chance to say yet? Not Whiskey Banger Joe, new Joe, Fantastic Four Joe.
Oh, man, if I could be known as Fantastic Four Joe for the rest of my life, that'd be great.
Well, we started the nickname right here, Fantastic Four Joe. Continue.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of people made really good points that I had in my notes that I wanted to hit. Mar pointed out his Etsy comments are all so positive. Like, I'm fairly confident they're either fake accounts or close friends of his, because every single one of them has the same theme of like, oh, well, it might take a while to get it, but because he's a master and he's always working on orders. And it's like, okay. I'm not sure if they mentioned the Instagram account that I opened after he scammed me.
Spill the tea. We have not heard about this.
Oh, I documented everything that happened. I've got all the chat threads. It is the Jim Logan is a scammer. I did that because at the time his Instagram username was just the Jim Logan, and I was like, cool, I'm going to make it so that if you try to find his name, you find this as well.
Oh my God. Yep. I type in the Jim Logan and it comes up with, do you mean the Jim Logan is a scammer? Yes, I do. Let me look at it.
The problem is that I think I had a hand in him losing his Instagram account because I reported him to both WB and Disney copyright teams. And within like 12 hours, his account was gone. And I was like, I mean, it sucks because it's hard to follow him now and figure out where he's at. But
yeah, but you also are preventing a large swath of people because the algorithm is just going to send people that way.
Yes.
And you've clicked on one ad, you're going to click on one of these things that pop up, and people are not going to know the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you guys were mentioning before, Michael, I think you were saying like take a second and third look. Like I've been kicking myself ever since it happened, because just like other Joe, like I had followed Jim for years before I even bought something. In fact, he got me with like a sob story about like, oh, my studio is closing during quarantine. Like I need sales in order to like keep the studio open. And that was when I made my order, because I was like, oh man, like you make great stuff. I don't want you to go out of business. And then to get scammed and then find a forum with 98 pages of people talking about it, I was like, am I just an idiot? Like, how did I miss all of this? It's insane.
You're not an idiot, and nobody here is an idiot. then, and I want to all give yourself that grace. I think that it's a weird niche of this greater comic book community, and there is a cancer here who has been able to take hold and has taken people's stuff, and it's really sad. And it sounds like legally it's just under the bare minimum for the authorities to care, and as long as he can keep the charade going. And it also makes me sad to then fake that business or whatever that was during COVID, where you legitimately were trying to help.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am now aware of this. And now that I am aware, like a court-appointed monitor, if I see something, I say something. Do I go post on that form? Do I come to you? Because that's all I can do now with this information, because I know he will pop up again under some incarnation of this.
Yeah, he already has a fresh Etsy shop. I think we shared it in our Discord. I mean, if nothing else, us victims got brought together, which is kind of neat. I like new friends. I don't know. Posting on the forum, I mean, I can only draw from my own experience, but I didn't find the forum until after I knew everything had gone bad. So I don't know that would help. I don't know. My approach has just been, I mean, make a public Instagram with the same handle as him and draw people to it has been the only thing I can think of. But even that, like, I got a few people who would message me and tell me like, hey, like, thanks so much for like having this account. Like my friend just bought from him, or like I was thinking about buying something from him. But like, it feels like, drops in a bucket, honestly.
Yeah, I think the RPF forum is a good way to have like a history of it. So I think it's still good to post there to kind of keep a paper trail. But I do think probably social media, these days is the best way. It's really just about raising awareness, right? Because he's always going to change the name, and it's going to be hard for new people who don't know about him to kind of keep track of that if it's a brand new name he's appearing as. So it's really just about anytime anyone has any interaction with him or encounters him, I think just trying to share it online, spread the word, so that just word of mouth spreads across the internet, and people hopefully kind of catch on, like, hey, any similar name to him, if they recognize the face, the images, the types of props and cosplay, like kind of steer clear. So I mean, I think that was a big goal for the video that that I was working on, and everyone here can kind of helped out as well. Is like, we were hoping this video would kind of just spread out and go viral, and more people will see it. And I think it really does rely on bigger creators also helping kind of spread the word, because it just needs to hit more people early.
Well, thank you for spending this time. I think that the four of you Fantastic Four, are speaking for a lot of people that aren't here. Michael, you, the scientist of the bunch. Mar, you're literally the invisible woman. We cannot see you. Wissy Banger sounds like he lights on fire. And Fantastic Four Joe, you are the rock of this group, just like you are of that group. You already mentioned the form. You are not, unfortunately or for good, your names are now all attached to this. And I appreciate you putting a face to this. What are handles? Where would you like people? You mentioned the form, that's fine, but these things are going to pop up. Or if people want to share with you and commiserate with you the terrible things that have happened to them, how can people reach out to people?
I'll go first. For me, it's just the Instagram that I made, which again is at thejimlogan.isascammer. And like I said, I have a few people already in my messages who have commiserated about it. I'll probably, if he does end up making another Instagram account, my plan is to update the name of mine to match his again. But that's really the best place to reach me.
I think for me, it's maybe one of the more helpful things that could be done is the video that, again, we made. I think it's called like Got Scan Making a Batman Beyond movie. Like, just honestly, like, commenting there, anything to boost that video will help a lot. So if you comment there, if you share it, spread it around, and then just from there you can find all the social media links we have like on Instagram or something. So yeah, if there's any other people who've been scammed, definitely reach out. I think there's a lot of us out there. The more we can kind of form a community and spread awareness, the better.
Yeah, and another thing would be, I lost access to his page after being blocked, because that's what he does. He blocks you, so you can't interact with any of his followers. But before that, when I knew, and I was still silently in the wings waiting, because I was playing the nice guy route for a long time. But anyone that would show interest, like, oh man, that's cool, how much do you charge for this? I'd go and I'd message them directly and be like, you don't want to do this. Here's the forums. Here's how much I lost. Blah blah blah. And a couple people were like, dang, thank you. I was just about to give them money, sort of a thing. So if anyone sees this or sees the video that Michael put together, if you see anybody on his page inquiring about it, DM him and say, hey, here's the forums. This guy's a scam artist. Don't do it. Don't throw your money away. So that would be one thing I'd give out to the viewers, because he tries to render you speech, or voiceless, I guess I should say. But the more people that know about this, the more people that have, like Michael said, more followers, they'll hear about it, they'll see it, sort of a thing. So, I would just reach out and say something. The cosplay community is pretty tight knit, so I think they should probably keep going with that.
I think that we use that as a rallying cry and use today's date as an inspiration. Let's never forget the 5th of November. I think we need to get this going. I think we need to let people know we've cemented it here to bring justice to the scammer. And I think if we all put on our Guy Fawkes masks and get out to the streets, that's how we're going to do this. I feel like we're starting something here, and that's what we do. And we keep pushing that snowball until it reaches something. Because I guarantee you there's probably other scams in his life. I'm sure if we were to contact his interpersonal relationships, I bet he's already burned those bridges. And it is sad to hear that he is now burning these bridges of anonymous people online who are good faith actors. By your replica knives, by Thor's hammer, I mean, I can see that you are the audience for these things. So thank you for bringing this to our audience, and keep spreading the good word.
Thanks so much,
Yeah,
guys.
for sure. Yeah, thanks for
Thank
having
you.
me. All right.
Thank you so much for joining us. We are not scammers. We make this content for you every week. If you would like to help keep us too doing this thing, please head over to the patreon.com/theculturednerd. We have a wonderful group of individuals that help keep all of this going. Thank you so much for providing us with the ability to make you this content. Taylor Murphy has been your host. Me, Michael Santel, have been your co-host. Our logos by Jose Navarro and our intros by Taylor Murphy and Jay Stu, who's back. Check out his new movie. If you have those cell phones, please like, comment, subscribe. Do the same thing on Michael Yu's video so we can get that tracking in the algorithm so more people can see this. Thank you all for joining us. Taylor, thank you so much for having us. And we'll see all you kids and cats next time.